your screen, so I'll just do that now. So welcome everybody. My name's Lauren Kerrison. I work for the Tasmanian Chamber of Commerce Industry. Thank you for joining today's session. Craig is the Managing Director and founder of the Loyalty Zone. He's one of Australia's leading experts in improving customer loyalty, and he's regularly interviewed on radio by leading stations like 2GB in Sydney and 3AW in Melbourne. He uses groundbreaking research, training and coaching programs that are world-leading in their application and results. He has achieved significant success in improving revenues with sales increasing in excess of 200 million for one client alone. Craig's programs have been delivered in 28 countries and translated into 11 languages. He's a highly rated speaker whose sessions are lots of fun with a high level of participation and questions and interactions. He loves learning, and his aim is to inspire others with his energetic style and the value he creates in everything he does. Over his working life, Craig has worked with many major global and Australian companies, including Shell, McDonald's and Rolls-Royce, just to name a few, many more. He also works with NFPs and many smaller businesses who have a passion for delivering the best possible experience to their customers, and that is why we are here today. So I'll hand over to Craig Cherry. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lovely to talk to you all. We're going to go through some information. I'm passionate about loyalty. I'm going to take it that all of you have a level of interest because you've given your time here today. I apologise that I understand there was a miscommunication about start times. So, I thank you very much for your flexibility of better come an hour later. So first question is, if you're able to answer this by going unmuting, and even if I can't see you, how many of you factually know what your customers are saying about you to others? So when I say factually, I mean it's using a proven methodology and it's statistically valid. So you can either say yes or put your hand up or just say nothing because you can't answer that question. Okay, so I didn't see too many. I see a little shake of the head there, Natalie. So yeah, and look, I present to leaders all the time, all over Australia, and as you said, all around the world. I find most really can't say yes to that. So what I want to show you today is how important it is to get this sort of information. So, and how do we actually get customer loyalty, and then how do we keep it? So there are a lot of times if you want to ask questions, Lauren's going to keep an eye on the chat. So I welcome interruption, right? So don't worry about that. But Lauren is also keeping an eye on the chat. So if you have a question and you're not sure it's the right time to ask it, then just stick it in the chat and then she'll let me know. And there will be time at the end for you to ask any questions as well, right? And of course, I am going to be engaging you as we go along for those who are able to communicate with me. So let's get into the first thing, I guess, is get a feeling of the sort of companies that I've worked for. So I think I saw the list of people who are coming on this, and I believe most of you would probably fit into one of these categories somewhere, right? So I've worked with all different types of businesses. As Lauren said, some really large ones, but probably more now. I just love working with people who, owners and operators and people who can really make a difference. Couple of quick things. We're going to do a little bit of pre-work before we get into looking at, sort of the whole thing about how to identify loyalty. So I'm really passionate about improvement. So all of my clients all want to be better than they are now. And what's interesting is most of them are already very good. I'm always told about companies, oh, you got to go work for them. Gee, they need your help. And I go, yeah, but are they really open to it? So the people I often perform well often seem to want to get better. So on this little triangle here, we've got skill set, mindset, and structure. All of these, I'm sure you agree, are really important to a business. What's the skill set of people? What's the mindset they have? And what is the structure or the system that they work to? But one of these has been proven to be the most important. So what I'd love you to do in the chat is, which one do you think is the most important to drive improvement? Now, all of them are important, but one's been proven to be the most. And it's actually critical to what we're going to do for this hour. So just write in the chat now, which one do you think's the most? We've got mindset, 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 mindset. Okay, mindset's getting heavily voted for, right? So Tracy, could you mind unmuting? And I'm gonna maybe ask a question from you. So you answer the question like most people do, right? Which is they talk about mindset. It's actually structure.
Really?
Yeah, structure's actually so let's talk about this because I think it's really key to understand, because to me, part of the session today, it's not about just getting data, it's what you do with what you know and how do you improve it. So Tracy, any thoughts of why structure actually, the system or the process that you work in a business actually has a bigger impact on performance than the mindset or the skill set?
Well, I suppose you can't manage what you can't measure.
Yeah.
And it's how you collect it.
Okay, good. What's your business?
We have a hotel in Stanley.
Okay, perfect.
And accommodation.
You're a perfect example of this, right? I do a lot of work with hospitality, right? So, imagine you've got people in your restaurant, Tracy. If you had no real system to follow, you had great skills, individually good skills, good attitudes, but there was no system to follow, what would it be like in the restaurant?
Chaos.
Perfect. That is the most chosen word to answer that question. So you've just answered why it's so critical to have structure, right? Because without the structure, even great mindset and even good skills end up going, oh, but I don't know what table to take it to. You know, just as a really simple example. Does that make sense, Tracy?
It does.
Great, right? So that's why structure. Like I do a lot of work with a company that builds, and does servicing. Imagine if there was no system in the workshop. It would be, in fact, everyone just says chaos. So I want you to keep this in the back of your mind as we go through this. So I do a lot of work in helping people have more skill. I do a lot of work on Carol Dweck's work, which is growth and fixed mindset. So I've been trained by her. But structure is the thing I have to most work on if I'm going to improve a company. So here's my system. What's my structure? So this is what I do with people. Now, not every company does all of this, but I'll just quickly explain it. So the first thing that I do, so if any company said to me, Craig, we'd love you to help us improve. I go, do you have any customer data? Is it valid? It's not, and this is not social media. That's not valid data, right? So have they got any research? If they haven't, that's the first thing that I do is go and talk to their customer. Anyone, Dion, you got a thought about why would I want to talk to the customer if I want to help a business improve?
You need to find out what the customer's wants are rather than assuming you know what they are.
Great. Yeah, but the old great no assumptions, right? So imagine though, all of you, none of you have really said to me today that we've got some valid data. So, but we're making decisions all the time, but we're not involving our customer in the decisions. So do we know what has them want to come back? Do we know what they think about us? I always think, what would they be saying about us if you're sitting in a cafe and you had your customers sitting at a table next to you talking about your business? Do you know what they would be saying? So I do team and research, and that tells me everything I need to know. Like I do a lot of work with sales. How can I help a sales team if I don't know what the customers are saying about their experience of dealing with the sales team? So once we understand that, and that's what I'm mainly going to take you through today, right, is this step one, because without that, everything else is probably a bit of a waste of time. Then we look at what we call moments of truth or service standards, and service standards. So I don't know if anyone know what a moment of truth is. What's a moment of truth? You all have multiple moments of truth in your business.
Customer interactions.
Yeah, great. All these interactions. A simple way to show it is like this. Imagine going on a plane. Right? You may see an advertisement, you go and buy the ticket, there's a moment of truth. You check in, another moment of truth. You go through security, another moment of truth. You might go to a lounge. I travel a lot, so I go to a lounge, right? You then go to the gate, another moment of truth. Then you're on the flight. Now, my joke is if you're flying Jetstar, that's normally the end of your experience of moments of truth, but depends on who you fly with, right? And then you depart, another moment, get your bags. Everyone tries to avoid that by stacking everything they can in the plane. And then you depart, right? All of these moments make up what for a customer? Anybody's welcome to shout out. What are all those moments make up? Yeah, great. And that's, so all the airlines, if they're really good, they're looking at every one of those moments and how do we make them stand out? Otherwise, what are you going to do? You're going to go, that was good, but. And it's the but that often kills us in a business, right? So, and again, if you think about a plane, they all look similar. The pilots all sit up the front. They sit in the same sort of seats, you know. So what makes that different? So what we establish is, what are all those key touch points? Then, if you've got these moments, and you start to develop standards, but how could I develop standards if I didn't know what the customer wants? So we've got that at number one first. Then I do a coaching program. That's what I'm probably most famous for, as leaders, as coaches, helping people improve the performance of their team in that moment. Then we've got to take it to the frontline team. If we don't change the behavior of the frontline team, nothing's really going to change, but it starts with the leaders first. And I'm sure some of you, I am talking to stuff that you probably talk all the time, how important the leaders are. Now, the test and measure, I love this one. So I know a lot of you, I can't see you, but I want you to imagine, you know, the game bowling, 10-pin bowling. Can you all put 3 fingers up? Even if I can't see you, I'm going to ask you to do it, right? So imagine you're going to bowl that ball down that long wooden path towards 10 large pins, right? Robert, if you don't mind unmuting, the moment that leaves your hand, Robert, and it's going down the lane, what do you want to know? The ball's left your hand and it's going down the lane. It didn't go in the gutter.
Well, you want to know that they sent it down the right way in the first place, I suppose. Be confident
right.
that you sent it the right place.
All right, so it hits the pins. What do you want to know, Robert?
How many went down? No,
Right,
I don't.
so-
I want to know how many's still standing.
Good, right? So what's hanging from the ceiling?
Hopefully the thing to swipe away all the ones that I've just gone and knocked down and replace a full set.
Good. Yeah, so you've got a scoreboard and it tells you exactly how many pins you've hit and what's left, right? So that's the fundamental part of bowling. So I want you to all imagine what would be like if you bowled, but there was a huge curtain going down the middle of the lane and you could no longer see the pins. It goes under the curtain. You can hear it, but you can't see it. And you get your results next week. For those of you I can see, would you want to play bowling now? Yes or no? No. So Robert, if I continue with you, why not? Why would you not want to bowl anymore?
Well, I'm not sure if the time and effort I've invested in trying to throw this ball down the wooden lane was worth it in the first place.
Perfect, right? So, and I think even if I try to negotiate with you and say, look, I'll put it on a laptop, but you've got to leave the lane, go up to the back office, open up the computer, find the program, find your lane, and then get your score. Would that be okay?
It would be a pain in the bum.
It would be a pain. So what are you really saying, and I think you're all with this, is that if you're playing any sport or game, you want to know how you're going in the moment. But what happens in most companies?
I'd
It's all lag,
suggest
isn't it? It's all too late.
Why?
We get to find out how we're going, but by the time we get that information, it's too late. So one of the things I'm very passionate about, as you can probably gather in my voice, is how do you know you're winning the game while it's being played? And it's actually not that hard to do that, you know. So in hospitality, you know, we actually are measuring, you know, like if we want to, I have a game I play with hospitality is to improve the average spend by at least $2. I've never missed it. In fact, my latest is 13, right? When that makes a no-brainer to do anything, right? Because you're making, you know, you do 2,000 covers a week, you're making $2,000, you know, $4,000 extra per week. But one of the ways we do that is we're looking at all of the opportunities to let people know about other things, and we're measuring that. We measure each person, how they're going, you know, how can we improve them? And then the last one is probably, I think, the most important, because even doing research, like I do not do one-off research projects. I don't mind doing one for a company who's not sure of the value, but if they say they only want to do it once, I say, you're wasting your time, don't bother. Same as if you guys are sending people to training courses, you know, and I love training, that's my profession. But, you know, I think all of you, if I sent you on a course and there was no follow-up back to the job, what would be most predictable? Natalie Hayes, what do you think? What happens if you send people on a training course, they come back, but there's no follow-up?
Or they forget what they've learned for a start, and, you know, practical application, I guess, brings it all together.
Yeah. So, and the
That's
problem
when
is we keep repeating it though, don't we? We keep sending people on things, but there's no follow-up. So even when I do research, it's measure, act. Then you measure again to find out, did the actions we take from the previous lot of research actually impact our customers' experience? Now, one of my frustrations, and again, it's nice that I'm seen as an expert, like I'm not really known in Tasmania at all. This is why I'm starting to do this, which has been quite frustrating because I have people ring me from all these other places and then no one even returns my phone call here. Robert, you did. I'm not blaming you, Robert, right? But, you know, so going back to this, so, and then there's other companies who do too much research. So you'll know the ones, you ring them and they'll say, can you stay on the line and please answer our survey? The problem with that is it's just data, 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 data. Where's the action coming from? Measure, act, measure, act. Now, the frequency of the measure would probably be depending on what the score's like. The least is, I would say, 6 monthly. The most, I would say, is 4 monthly. Because you need time to actually take an action. So it's just making sense. If it's making sense, please put your thumb up. Okay, cool. So for the ones I can see, we're going okay. So let's now move into finding out more about doing number one, but a couple more things before we get to that. So we got the moments of truth. So fundamentally, I think one of the secrets is where's the gap? So if you're understanding what your customers want from the ones who love you, the ones who maybe don't love you so much, the ones who are not going to come back compared to the ones who definitely want to use you again, what's the gap? And then once we can understand that gap, I guess the work I do is to work with people on how to bridge it. And here, if you got this as a philosophy, then it never stops, because you create the gap, you bridge the gap, and then you do more and you find another gap, and then you bridge that gap, and then you find another gap, and then you bridge that gap, and then you find another gap, and then you bridge that gap. So one of my first jobs after leaving as a teacher was my first career. I did 11 years. I worked for lotteries in New Zealand, and it was a very successful business, and I ran the whole training operation. And my boss, a guy called David Bale back in those days, he said, Craig, we're all about excellence. But here's the thing about excellence, is that as soon as the moment you think you've got there, it's moved. And it's really the same philosophy here. There's always going to be some gap. And then if we can keep doing that, you're just going to be becoming so strong in what you do. So a lot of my clients, they are untouchable to their competitors. They've done so much work, you are not going to catch them anytime soon. They are so good at what they do. Strong systems, great training, and customers are just coming back. So one more thing before we look at the data is, I think this is really a revenue conversation, right? So I do research to drive revenue. So to me, this is all about revenue ultimately. If you don't get a revenue gain, then there's something missing, especially if you're getting a higher score in your customer ratings. So let's have a quick look at a little formula. I believe this is probably one of the secret things that you're going to get out of today if you haven't seen this before. So number one is about what's your lead generation. How many new prospects are you getting? Do you even know that number? What is your lead generation rate? Number two is what's your conversion rate? Out of all the leads or prospects that you might get, how many of them do you actually convert to a sale? So obviously in a retail store, a lot of people measure this on how many people physically walk in and how many people actually buy. That's a simple conversion. But if you can get more leads and have a better conversion rate, you're going to have more new customers. Right? Now let's look at number three. Number three is all about existing. Are your current customers returning? And if so, what frequency? So a lot of my clients, we know the frequency we want them to have. It's like my clients who service engines. We know that a big truck that's doing a long haul Eastern Seaboard will be coming in once a month. If they're not, we're missing some of their business. So what's our transaction rate? And then can we increase the average spend? So if you can get your customers to come back more often, perfect ones for hospitality, and you get them to spend a little bit more, you're going to get more revenue from your existing customers. Now, I would argue that most companies spend a lot of money on number one, marketing, advertising, and I don't know, I would argue from my experience that not enough effort is put into number three, which is, are we giving an experience that has people want to come back and use us again? Whatever that frequency. I've just come from Perth this week working with a large construction company. You know, now we know our biggest one is going to be driving word of mouth. Give them an experience that has them want to tell other people to come and use us. Now we may not see them again for 5 to 10 years because when are they going to build another house, right? But that game is a massive game to play. So let's take this one step further. And again, you've got any questions, interrupt me. So let's imagine you had 400 potential customers and you converted 25% of them. So you had 100 actually paying customers. Let's say they came in twice a year, and like, there'll be different values. You can put $100 in here. It'll look similar. Say they spent 10 grand each. So there's $2 million of revenue. One thing I asked all the people that I work with is, do you believe you could improve your own performance by 10%? So for those who I can see on the screen, put your hand up if you believe you could increase your own performance by 10%. Okay, and just about everyone always puts their hand up, 10%, right? If I said 50, what might you say? If someone puts their hand up, you're probably thinking, gee, you're not getting a lot out of you, right? So let's look at 10%. But here's the thing. A lot of companies look at their top line revenue and go, okay, that's 2.2 million. What I'm sort of arguing is, but hey, what happens if we get a little bit better at everything we do? Could we get a little bit better at lead generation? Yet to see a company that can't. Could we get a little bit better at our conversion rate? Again, I've yet to see a company that can't. So suddenly we've got 21 more customers. Doesn't sound a lot. Let's say they average, instead of 2 times a year, we got an average of 2.2. Instead of 10 grand, we somehow got another $1,000. Now look what happens. There's a reason why I asked you about 50%, because we've just increased revenue by 46.4%. So to me, this is a formula that I think, I know one accountant that has this on the back of their business card. That's what they help their clients do. I reckon that's what business is about, sitting on there. Are we getting new people? Are we converting them? Are they wanting to come back? And can we get them to spend a little bit more by giving add value offers, not pushing people? Because I do a lot of research, I know exactly how people want to be sold to. And one thing they don't like is being pushed. They may say yes, but they'll never come back. So what the work I do, I have to get this right, because I'm going to be researching their customers again in 4 to 6 months' time. If I get this wrong, we're going to hear about it. So, that's why I'm so passionate about the research starting, is because it drives everything. Okay, so they're sort of the prelims. So, again, it's probably going to be more about system than just attitude and skills. It's going to all relate and help drive us more revenue, and we need to sort of match all those touch points that we have. But let's get into this side. So there's 2 types of research. There's statistically valid research using a proven methodology. In my case, it's called the Net Promoter Score, which I'm a certified provider of globally. This picture is the other type of research, which we call buttock research. Anyone know what buttock research is? Dion, do you know what buttock research is? There's a reasonable clue. You have to unmute though, Dion.
Yep, no, that's better. I actually have no idea.
It's pulling it out of your backside. And that was the polite way of me saying it, Dion, right?
Fair enough.
So, and I think someone actually said that near the beginning, is that you're sort of guessing. You're just going to guess. I think, like, I was talking to a company the other day, they had a strategic meeting and all their team came together. They were doing strategy. And I go, but you told me you don't have any customer data. How do you run a strategic meeting, strategic planning, and you have no customer data? And on the other hand, you tell me that your customers are the most important thing with your team, but you don't have any data. So we don't want to be guessing. So the work I do is I only do 2 types of research. I don't do any online research, and there's a reason why. Not, because I just don't want to do it. I don't get the quality of data that I need to help a business drive revenue. So we either do telephone, which is mainly, or face-to-face. And I'll explain why in a few minutes. Again, I'm a passionate believer in getting data. As you can see a few quotes there. Sherlock Holmes said, it's a capital mistake to theorize before one has data. And one of my CEOs that I work with, this is his comment to his staff. If we have data, let's look at data. If all we have are opinions, well, let's go with mine then. So, anyone know what we're going to do now? Tracy, looking at that picture, what do you think we might be doing now? This is probably more about my sense of humor than anything.
I don't know, lock something in a box.
Yeah, we're going to do a case study. Good. Look, hold your laughter back. Natalie, I can see you're laughing behind your hand. That's really good. You didn't want to let me know that you actually thought that was funny. Okay, so we're going to do research. Again, the reason to do research is to get clarity, and it's all about power. So normally I'll stand people up, but since it's got half the people I can't see, just trying to think about it. It's all about, if you more clarity you have, the more power you have. So I'm going to introduce you, if you don't know, the Net Promoter System. It's the most used method in the world for measuring customer loyalty. A guy called Frederick Reichheld designed it, and it came from doing customer satisfaction. So what he proved, that customer satisfaction didn't drive revenue. So companies were going, 90% of our customers are satisfied or more, and then he tracked them and they weren't getting revenue. He thought there's something missing in that. So what he identified is the ones who really drive revenue are your promoters. They score you 9 or 10 out of 10. There's the passive group. This is probably the most important group. All right, so 68% of all consumers in Australia fit into what we call passive, which means I got what I expected, but you didn't really stand out, or this was good, but. And that's my experience in a lot of places. That was good, but. And the problem is the but has the power. And of course you have detractors, perfectly named. They detract others from coming back to you. So how do we identify where people sit? Right. So first of all, how the Net Promoter Score is done is your promoters minus your detractors equals your net position. Another way of saying this is your positive word of mouth minus your negative word of mouth is your net position. Right. So how we do that, so if I was surveying you on the phone, I'd ring you up. Now we have a 90% acceptance rate to being surveyed on the phone, which is something we measure as a key measure of my business. We go, how likely would you recommend? So who had the restaurant again? So what was your business called, Tracy?
Stanley Hotel.
Okay, Stanley Hotel. So let's use that as an example. How likely would you recommend Stanley Hotels to a friend or a colleague? 10, you definitely would. 0, you definitely wouldn't. What number would you choose? They choose whatever they want to say. They'll just choose a number. If they score 9 or 10, we ask them this question. What's the main reason for the score you gave us? Now, listen carefully. It's not tell us what's good. What is the main reason? So we're going to document all of that data. You might survey 200, 300 people, maybe depending on the size of the business, right? And again, why do I do it on the telephone? Because they might say, what would you hope someone says, Tracy? What would you hope they say if I researched? What would you love them to say?
We exceeded their expectations.
Okay, good. So if you were doing an online survey, the reason I'm giving you 9 is because you exceeded my expectations. The problem is, what does that mean? On the phone, what we do is, when you say we've exceeded your expectations, what exactly did we do that did that? So I reckon the secret to great research is the answer to the second question. It's the probing question. And that's why I don't do online, because I can't get that specific data. I'm not going to guess. That's buttock research. So what we end up with is what we call your best practice drivers. And I'm going to show you a real example in a minute. Now, if we go to the other side, if they score 8 or less, listen to this amazing question. What is the most important improvement? So we don't say, how can we improve? What's the most important improvement we could make for you to score us 9 or 10 in the future? So we're going to get a list of the most important things. And again, Tracy, they might say you need to improve your food. Well, what does that mean? So when you say we need to improve our food, what exactly is it that you think we need to improve? Again, if we don't get that level of specificity, we're going to guess what they meant, and that we end up wasting our time doing this in the first place. So that's how we start. Now, obviously, there's other questions that we ask as well. So then I'm going to show you. So this is a company called MTU in South Africa. So they have allowed me to share their data. This is the case study. Now, this company, I worked with them for 5 years. They improved their revenue. It's a $30 million turnover business. They improved their revenue in the first year by 19%, and they further increased it by a further 22% in the second year. MTU is a global company now under Rolls-Royce. The average improvement of all companies, company operations around the world was 3%. So this got noticed, right? What the heck is going on? And this was the only one doing the Net Promoter and doing that full program. All those things I showed you at the beginning, my 1 to 6 steps, they did the whole thing. And of course, it made them a significant amount of money. So we surveyed 154 customers. So that's all based on how much they deal with, because they sell $1 million engines. Plus 48 was their net promoter score. And this running score was down 6 points on the previous score. So 61% of their customers rated them as 9 or 10, 26 were passive, and 13% were detractors. So for most people, 13%, to be honest, I think is a little too high for detractors. 61 certainly shows. So data always tells a story. No one in this company can say we cannot deliver 9 or 10 because 61% of customers are getting that. So obviously we want to focus on that 26% and try and move that detractor score down below 10. Now, in all those companies that I've worked with in my 17 years of doing this so far, I have never met one who could justify more than 10% detractors. And it doesn't matter what sector. Now, let's go a bit further. Here's their every 4 months, right? So here's their first 5 surveys. So again, after each round of research, we ran a workshop, came up with actions, implemented the actions, and then measured again. Then another workshop after S2, implemented the actions, then measured again. As you can see, we were successfully driving down their passives and moving them to become promoters. So this Alan Rees is the CEO. He actually lives in Bright now in Victoria. But you can see we haven't really nailed, detractors, they're 11, 13, they dropped to 6, but then they're 13 again. Right, so I'm going to show you something about that. Here's a breakdown of the score. So one of the things I think if you do good research is you need to break down by segments. My ideal world is like 3 levels. Overall, and then what could the next level be? What could the next level be? This is level 2. So here's our overall score. But if we break it down by the partners who sell on their behalf, they're distributors, their sales, their mining, and their after sales. And you can see after sales has the most transactions because that's where the most surveys were. But look at this. The average detractor was 13%. Well, in their partners, not one was a detractor. In fact, 100% promoters. So we can't label everyone with one score. But look at the after sales, 15% detractors in after sales, where the sales and mining had 10. Mining actually dropped from the previous survey by 14, and so did after sales, but the sales actually went up +7. So we can sort of see why we lost some score there, that 6 points. Now let's take this another step. Let's go down to level 3 data. Let's break after sales down. Now, this is what I talk about, why I say clarity is power. Who can I choose? Is there anyone else I've got a picture of? Who else I know can talk to me? Rob, can you unmute Rob Alberti?
I can.
Tell me what you notice here, Rob. Now we go down to level 3. What do you notice? You there, Rob?
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out.
We'll have a look down, because before we could see that the after sales, now we're going to break after sales down. So they had 15% average detractors, but look down here.
Yeah, so it's actually in one particular area is sort of skewing the figures. So field
Perfect.
Service, workshop, and SSC.
See,
So
we
the
wouldn't
rest is
see
actually
that.
all right.
Rob. We wouldn't see that if we only had overall data, will we? So the importance of going down, breaking down by segments gives you that clarity. So now we know exactly where we need to work to really improve. That's way too many detractors. Now, we're not talking about a lot of people, because the average workshop thing's probably about $500,000, right? But we don't need 2 of them leaving as detractors. So this is my whole thing. Clarity is power. The more clarity you can get, the more you understand where you need to work. And again, I think the companies who do this poorly are the ones who just get score, and it's not broken down. So let's take this a step further for everybody, right? We asked every single customer we surveyed, the likelihood of using this company again the next time you needed their product or services. Now, this graph here is not dissimilar to any of my clients. Down the left-hand side is the ones who gave a 10, a 9, an 8, a 7, or a 6 or below, right? But across the page is what percentage of each of those groups said they were going to definitely come back. 97% of the people who gave a 10 out of 10 said, I am definitely coming back. But look at what happened at 9. Only 65% said, I'm definitely going to return. Look at the passives. So one thing, when people start to do this work, a lot of them said, oh my God, Craig, like I thought 8 out of 10 was a good score. And now you show me this and I'm going, 8 out of 10 is killing us. Only 48% of our passive customers said they're going to definitely return. In fact, if you put the passives together, only 43. So if we don't deliver 10 out of 10, we're just missing the boat. Near enough is not good enough. We asked them about word of mouth. How many of you have actually recommended us to a friend or a colleague? Look at the pattern again. 42% of 10s actively recommended them to other people. But the passives, like at 7, were hardly getting anything. That's a 7 out of 10. We even asked them how many people they told. The average 10 told 4.2 people. The average 9 told 2.9 basically, and then 2.5. So this is why I talk about, if you ask me in a lift, what do? I go, I do research to drive revenue. And why it drives revenue is if you get this right, you're going to get way more repeat business. You're going to get way more word of mouth. But I'm not saying it's easy. It takes something to stand out at that level. So really, in a way, the question is now like, okay, great, Craig, this is good. I understand. If I want to maximize word of mouth, I've got to get them to rate me 10. If I'm going to maximize my repeat business, I've got to get them to rate me 10. Well, how do I know what 10 is? Let's go back to the research again. Remember the question. Can anyone remember the question that we asked the 9 and 10s? It starts with, what is the
Main reason for your
Good
score
memory.
you gave us.
Very good, Dion. The main reason. All of those answers tell us exactly what we've got to do to deliver 9 and 10. So let's have a look at it. Unprompted. So the most valid research is unprompted, not, oh, which of these things would you say are the right thing about us? Don't give them questions. Don't get them to answer one of your choices. Let them tell you what's important to them. So 54% unprompted said prompt and efficient stands out. 37% said helpful, and you go down the line. But of course, on the research, we go, when you say prompt and efficient, what do you mean by that? So what we end up with is a 1 A4 page with the best practice for this company. So I'm going to get a couple of people to help me out here. David, would you mind unmuting and just read what the customers said was so good about prompt and efficient?
Key insights. We always complete service and orders ahead of our customers' deadlines. Their parts are always delivered in a timely manner. We arrive on site on time and finish the work when we promise the customers we will. We respond to the customers' inquiries regarding engine problems or quotes as soon as possible. We help them get everything they need when they need it.
Good. So we don't have to guess what prompt and efficient means, David. They told us exactly what it means. So we analyze every word they say. Then you can see what they said about helpful and what they said about communication. Our servicing department always keeps customers informed about the work we're doing. Our parts team provide useful feedback and advice to customers when they inquire about anything. We make sure that our customers understand our reports and the work we've completed for them. We make sure our customers are always up to date. So go back to here. Now we know we have to deliver 10. Now on 1 A4 piece of paper, there's what 10 stands for. That if they have that experience, they will score us 9 or 10. Right? So, and most of this, if you're even reading it through, it's not rocket science here. But look at the words underlined, like it's not sometimes, it's always. It's not just good, it's very good. It's not just some people who do it, it's all of them. You know, these are the things that make the difference. Now, we've also got another list. What were the most important improvements we could make, right? And so they mentioned prompt and efficient. They mentioned they had complaints about the product, the stock. They had complaints about communication. They had complaints about price. They had complaints about the MTU system and the knowledge and expertise of the people. Now, if you go back to the first one, there's no comments about price here. The 9 and 10s never mentioned price. This, by the way, this product is the most expensive product in the world. They are the most expensive. And the 9 and 10s didn't even mention price. I love Warren Buffett saying, he says, price is what you pay, but value is what you get. All of the research, the thousands and thousands of points of research I've done in my life, and hardly ever do we see price come up from promoters. So let's take this a step further. We've got 2 lists. Now we've got to understand what they mean. So listen to the difference, David, when you hear the difference from the improvement. They could handle parts deliveries with more flexibility. They should have more staff in the service division. Remember what we saw before? The lower scores were in the service division. Now we can see it tracking through to actual comments. They need to speed up their process. It takes a week for a technician to be available. No wonder we got detractors. There's always been a very long delivery period for products. They take too long to get the work done. So we have there's key improvements for every area. Right? So again, on two sides of a piece of paper, you got everything sitting there. But let's take this a step further. Overall, so again, when we survey, we actually asked 9 or 10s. Even though you gave us a great score, is there anything we can improve? And a lot of 7 and 8s have positives. They go, this was good, but. Well, now we go, everything they've said, whatever they were positive about, we're going to graph. So 38% of customers said prompt and efficient stands out, 14% complain. 25% said communication stands out, but 11%. So this is what we call variation against appreciation. So if anyone's ever heard of Deming, comes from Deming. So we can look at, we've got too much variation here against the appreciation. Helpful, not one customer said we're unhelpful. So that's great. High appreciation, no variation. So we can straight away see exactly where we need to put our attention in the workshop. Right? Now we can take this a step further as well. So our rule is anything red over 10%, we've got to bring that down. If we want to move our score, bring the red down below 10. Otherwise, there's another strategy. I'll show you something. So see how we can put this, we've got the same green and the same red. Anyone got a thought what the orange means? Dion, what do you think the orange color means? So green is the things that stand out. Red are the most important improvements. These are the main reasons they give a 9 or a 10. But when there's this orange color, like
neither here nor there.
Yeah, very good. Dion, your words are just about perfect. Either here or there. Passive. So sometimes that's good. 90% of the customers never mention price. Now, when I work with the sales team, Dion, what do you reckon their biggest complaint was?
Price.
Oh, yeah, we're too expensive. I go, well, let's go and have a look at the research, fellas. Right? Because 90%, the only people who complained about price were the people who got a bad experience. Right? Now, I don't think 98% not talking about friendly is very positive. So what does that mean? Most people said friendly is what I expected, but it didn't stand out. So if the red's under 10, we focus on moving orange to green. All right. So then we can look at field service. So remember the field service had quite a low score. Look at the red, 22% complaints on prompt and efficient, 22% complaints on communication. So then we can look at workshop. We can see exactly for each area, exactly where we need to improve and what we're doing well. So it's not all about the negative. In fact, the most important thing I think I show a company is not this stuff. It's actually their best practice. Once you understand best practice, you can replicate it. Right? Because really, if you look at the improvements, they're just the opposite. Instead of people saying, they keep customers informed, they make sure we understand our reports, things like that. They end up saying things like they should reply to emails and calls faster. They do not provide feedback. They're too hard to contact. They don't explain what they've done. So there's too much variation. Variation is the devil for appreciation. Let's take this one more step further. Right. So this is another company that I work with in Australia who's very similar. And because we actually keep learning ourselves about ways to do things. So the same thing, you can see all of the results of the research, where the red is, where the green is. Here's the average of everybody. But we can now break it down by, well, let's look at promoters on their own. Look at the difference of the promoters. Remember, 61% of the customers were promoters. So that shows what's possible. Look at the difference. Workmanship's gone from 48 to 55. Prompt and efficient's gone from 44 to 58. The red's just about disappeared. So the promoters are getting a consistent experience. So when I'm working with these guys, I go, you can do this. Look, there's the majority of your customers. What we're going to work out is why do we have some variation and where do we need to pinpoint that? Now let's look at the passives. Look at the difference. These are scores of 9 and 10. These are scores of 7 and 8. Still good. Remember I said the good but? Good but. Good but. And if you look at detractors, you can see why they were detractors. Not just because they're negative people. 48% complained about workmanship. 43% complained about prompt and efficient. So there's no guessing here. We can see exactly what's happening. We can break it down to each area and understand exactly what we need to do to improve, right? So ultimately, it's this. We'll normally get people to say this out loud, but, you know, so it's everybody, every day, every time, without fail, no exceptions. It's when you get that, everyone going in the same direction, following a system that's proven to work for the customer, right? Then we're going to get this sort of look. We're going to get a lot of green and very low red. I often ask people in a company, would my experience of you depend on who answers the phone? Or depend on who I meet first? And a lot of people say, yeah, there'd be some people I'd rather you didn't meet first. Go, well, what are we doing to, you know, reduce that variation and get, it shouldn't matter who I talk to, everyone should be going in the same direction, you know. Now you need your, what I call your aces in the right places. So in a restaurant, one of my key things is a host must be one of the best people. That's your first impression. If they're not really good, got the right behaviors, then it can fall down. So some restaurants have little young kids on host and they don't have the level of engagement that you need to have. So it's cool. We've got to have our aces in the right places, right? So you can also, like this one, this company here had a whole lot of branches, you know, and look at the scores in the branches. We had one scoring plus 75. That's a fantastic net promoter score. But we had one branch scoring at plus 26. Look at the variation. So what that straight away shows this company, and I work with the leadership, is there's too much variation inside your branch world. One branch had 21% thing. So now we know this, we can work, I would work with each branch as well. Now, when I started working with this company, they had a net promoter score of 0, and their current net promoter score is plus 70. They've gone from a company that was turning over about 300 million to a company that's turning over $1 billion. I'm not saying that's all to do with this. They would certainly say it's made a big difference. Ultimately, so, you know, again, I haven't even shown you an individual customer feedback yet. So once we've done all of this work, then they read the individual customer comments. So you can see exactly word for word who the customer was, if they're willing to give their name, what business they come from, what role they play, and their verbatim. Anyone got a thought about why I don't actually let them read the customer comments at the beginning? Anyone got a thought about why? Why leave that till they've seen all of the trends, they've seen all of the data, now go and read the comments?
Might give them a false sense of security.
Yeah, might do. And also, what do people do when they read an individual comment they don't like?
Ignore them.
Yeah, they get hung up about it. Oh, that's not fair. You know, I know who that person is, and that wasn't. They get hung up on the detail. I go, it's not about each individual's comment. It's about the pattern. It's going on the patterns. I mean, we're not going to please everybody. You know, I mean, you know, I come from New Zealand. I think dickhead's a reasonable word in Australia as well. Like, some people are not the nicest customers you've ever met. I've just been teaching handling customer complaints to one of my venues in New South Wales. And, you know, some of the people they've got to deal with are abusive. So I'm teaching them how to deal with that. They're not always nice people. To be honest, if we survey that person, we probably don't care what they say. It's the pattern that's the key. So that was, I guess, the main thing that I wanted to do in the time that we have together today is, one, I guess, to show you the power of doing really good research, right? And really understanding, like, what is it that has our customers to really come back? Not what I think it is, what is it really? How do I engage my team? Like, if you go back to here, you know, we get that one-page sheet, which is our best practice. Who needs to know this page? So Tracy, in your business, if you did this for an example, who would need to know this in your business?
We all would.
You all would. Everyone's involved. Everyone needs to be going there. So why, I say workshop, we've got to engage everybody. I don't care what role they play. I don't care if they never meet a customer. They will impact them in some way. So them understanding this. So we do things like have a setup meeting at the beginning of their shift. We remind people of the key things we're working on. We've got the service standards in place because we're understanding what customers want. So then what have we got to do to make sure we deliver that every single time, not sometimes. And again, do we get it right every time? Of course not. But the better we get, the better we get. And if the revenue is showing, you get, I don't know, I'm extremely motivated by doing this stuff because I go, I benchmark everything I do. Where's your sales right now? What's your average spend? We get all that data. Okay, let's put this in place and let's see how we track. I should never cost the company any money, right? So I guess now is maybe a good time to ask some questions. I know I've gone quite fast through it, but I think hopefully it's making sense to you. And also I want to just let you know something because after talking to there was one more thing. This is what an action plan looks like. So there will be, there's an action plan for every individual area. So this one is for the field service, right? So here's what the good comments were. Here's what the negative comments were. If we look at this one close up, so they got positive comments about workmanship and they had variation. So when they come up with actions and we brainstorm a whole lot of things, what can we do to minimize the variation here? And what are we going to do to have more customers say this? So they literally get down to specific actions that then must be implemented. All right, so thoughts, comments, questions, anyone can unmute. Welcome to ask questions. I'm not sure if there's any in the chat there, Lauren.